So one of the biggest mistakes I see people in the FIRE movement make is focusing on paying down all their debt first. But just understand that you're not going to be able to clip coupons to the point of financial independence.
In my opinion, the people who are chasing FIRE don't want to work.
Part of the problem, in my opinion, with the FIRE movement is this kind of idealization of frugality, when I think it actually is more about efficiency. Being cheap is one category, and then being efficient's another one, in my opinion.
The biggest tip to FIRE is sacrifice.
What is up, YouTube? In today's video, myself and Mike Rosehart sit down and talk to you guys about tips for FIRE. If you're not familiar with FIRE, FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. It's an entire movement of people that are focused on their financial lives. A lot of people don't know how to handle money. A lot of people don't know how to invest. A lot of people just don't know where to even begin. So in today's video, we're going to give you some of our best tips related to FIRE. Let's dive into it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Matt McKeever channel. We're going to be talking about Canadian FIRE tips today.
Assuming we're recording, that's true. In today's video, myself and Mike Rosehart are going to sit down and talk to you guys exactly about just tips, tricks, and general philosophies, I guess, in regards to financial independence, retire early. So that's the FIRE movement. If you guys aren't familiar with it, you really should read up on it. Originally, I think both Mike and myself really discovered it through Early Retirement Extreme, which was Jacob Lund-Fischker. That's his entire book and philosophy and blog, and eventually became like an internet forum as well. I really love that resource. But let's kind of take a step back and just talk about some high-level strategies, tips, or tactics that we'd like to share with the audience today.
Yeah, so FIRE is financial independence, retiring early. It is a whole movement centered around the idea that you don't have to work your whole life. And so by definition, we will find ways and tips to help you reach a point where your passive income, and I truly mean passive, is greater than your living expenses. Therefore, you never need to work for the rest of your life because the capital assets that you have produce passive income you can live on for the rest of your life. And that is adjusting for inflation, all of that kind of stuff. So we're not going to get into the depths of that, but just so you have a preamble, understand what we're giving you tips about. They're similar to money tips, but more focused towards, I think, less of this like save 10% and like you can retire in 50 years, and more about how do you get there in 5 or 10 years? How do you enjoy like your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and 60s without being chained to a desk, to not be a desk jockey, to escape that world? And I think my first tip before I hand it back over to Matt for a layup would be the number one tip in my mind above all else is just understanding how you spend your money, becoming familiar with your money in general, so understanding where it's going, and then deciding, once you've understood where it's going, deciding how you want to basically how you want to allocate those resources. And that is FIRE. So if you have to decide, I'm going to allocate 50% or more of my income to my future self. And that's what it is. You're going to save it for the future to produce passive income so you don't have to work. And there's a whole bunch of strategies and tips. We can get very, in the weeds about how to save money and tips to like make your money go further. But at the end of the day, that's what FIRE is about, is finding a way to live on less, to having your money go a lot further. So either you earn more or you spend less.
To me, financial independence and retire early movement is really all focused on conscious consumption. And what conscious consumption is really about is making those choices between what's adding value to your life and what's subtracting value from your life. And Mike touched upon it real high level there before, but to me, I think that first, hitting that 50% savings ratio, that's one of the biggest tips I could provide. There's something really magical about the moment that you're saving 50% or more of your take-home income, because all of a sudden now I think you can really start to understand the power that there is in your saving versus spend ratio.
Yeah, exactly. You start with, if you're not saving at least 50% of your income, it's going to take you well over 20 years to reach early retirement unless you have a lucky windfall. I think the second big tip is, this is sort of, there's like, in my mind, there's 3 levers, and I say this at the end of every video because I think it's true. You gotta spend less, you gotta earn more, and you gotta maximize your returns. But I'm gonna hit the third point, because a lot of people, they have money trapped in their house, or they have some savings in cash, or they've got money in mutual funds paying ridiculous fees and getting terrible returns, or they have money sitting in a savings account, their tax-free savings account, doing nothing, earning like 1%. Yeah. So you're probably one of those people, because a lot of Canadians have equity in their home. Most of the people watching this channel, I'm sure, are like middle class or more. And so the second biggest tip is learn how to put your money to work. So first thing, save. Second thing, learn how to put your money to work. And that means not sitting in a bank account degrading to inflation. We assume, I think Matt and I both assume, one of the core tenets of FIRE is that your money is invested smartly.
Yeah.
And that means diversified into cash flow producing, appreciating assets. That means things like property that produces cash flow, rental income. That means buying exchange traded funds or ETFs or indexes that hold basically fractal ownership of dozens and hundreds of companies throughout the United States, Canada, the emerging markets, etc. That way you have a small piece of every company. You're collecting dividends, you're collecting a percentage of profit. As those markets appreciate, you get that capital appreciation on your money, and it outpaces inflation each and every year. So if you have assets that are not utilized properly, you have underutilized assets, you need to put those things to work. You need to pull the equity out of your home and put it to work. Borrow it at 3%, put it to work at 10. If you have cash sitting there doing nothing, at least put it in something.
And this is something that I think is maybe a bit counterintuitive to the FIRE movement, but that is really trying to maximize your returns. And a lot of people, when they first discover FIRE, they get really hung up in, I'm going to pay down all my debt, or I'm going to pay off my mortgage, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and they feel like that's going to give them a real sense of safety. Maybe it does from an emotional standpoint, but from like a truly just financial, data-driven standpoint, you're actually setting yourself back often by focusing on paying down really low cost debt, such as you're likely going to have on your principal residence. If you're paying like 3 or 4% interest rate on your principal residence, on your principal mortgage, all of a sudden we're now no longer being as effective with our resources as possible, because we should be able to produce a greater return even after inflation or any other considerations to beat out that 3 to 4% interest rate. So one of the biggest mistakes I see people in the FIRE movement make is focusing on paying down all their debt first. Now let's focus on paying down some of the really high interest, like credit card debt, things of that nature. If we're in the double digits, yes, there's a very strong argument to pay down that debt first. But once we get that debt off of our plate, I think a lot of investors and a lot of just aspiring FIREpreneurs would be better served to really focus on growing their income, growing their returns on assets, and that doesn't involve debt repayment.
Yeah, I want to second that with a quick 2-point shot. I would say, I get a lot of people reaching out who have credit card debt of $10,000 or $15,000, and they're like, hey, I'm ready to buy my first property. I have $20,000 in savings. I'm like, what are you doing with $20,000 in cash and 26% interest rate, $15,000 in credit card debt? Like, you're paying like $1,000 a month in interest on your credit card. Stop looking at real estate, pay off that credit card debt, and then we'll talk, right? So you got to look at what your money is costing you, right, to sit there in your bank account. And if you're basically paying 26% interest on your credit card, your money's costing you 26%. It's devaluing, right? So yeah, be smart with your money.
Yeah, and another big struggle I see a lot of people that get into FIRE focus on is emergency funds. And there's this real sense of bragging almost in FIRE communities about, I've got $50,000 saved up in my emergency fund, I've got $20,000 saved up. I'm just looking at that like it's dead money. It really isn't that productive. And realistically, most of us would be better served by having a credit card and a line of credit just set aside that is our true emergency fund, and then deploying the assets that people traditionally would build up in emergency fund. Deploy that out, take those money soldiers, put them back out to battle for you and make you greater returns versus just having dead money sitting there.
A pro tip I'm going to give you, building on his point, if you're just new to the FIRE movement, you have a full-time job right now, you're not ready, you haven't quit your job yet, go to all 5 of the major banks in Canada and go apply for a $30,000 unsecured line of credit. Most people make $50,000 or more will get approved. If you apply for all 5 at once, you have $150,000 in unsecured line of credit at 5, 6, 7% you can touch in the form of an emergency fund. You can use it to buy property or do whatever you want with that money. You can invest it and make a better return. I don't necessarily recommend that, but I currently have a 0 emergency fund. The only cash I keep liquid is for buying deals. I have lines of credits of over 6 figures unsecured that are there if I need them. So if I ever need to dip into cash for a year in a recession, I don't want to sell any stocks or sell any properties, I can dip into that line of credit and I can live on that if I need to, and then I can use the returns on my assets to pay the interest and still have profit left over. So I'm a big fan of no emergency fund at all. I know that's counterculture. All the financial planners are like, you need an emergency fund with 6 months or a year living expenses. I'm like, no. deploy all of your capital, have it work for you, and then have an unsecured line of credit at 5 or 6% that's there if you need it. Likely your passive income is going to always produce more than you need and you'll have surpluses, but if it doesn't for a time period, you have that line of credit there. We know the data suggests over a long period of time, once you get back into a bull market and you've got through the recession, that you will be able to replenish that emergency fund, right? And so I basically just pay the line of credit back down to zero and you'd be good to go. In most cases, you'd have no issue at all.
Yeah, another thing I'd like to point out for people that are really trying to embrace the FIRE movement is, I think, again, on a lot of the Reddits and a lot of the blogs that I used to follow, I saw this mistake of like, I think people just like playing games with themselves almost. And what I mean by that is like going way too deep down the credit card hole of credit card churning, or trying to save every single penny through rebates or coupon clipping, when realistically you can probably take like 20% of the actions in that space and you're going to outpace 80% of your competition, which means you're getting the vast majority of the rewards right there. But rather than figuring out on exactly the most optimal credit card churning strategy, you're probably better off just to have a couple simple cashback credit cards that either have low or no fees, but you've done a quick calculation to figure out what the greatest ROI is, and then you move on. Way too often I find people, they want to get really fixated on one deal and they want to become, you know, the coupon queen. And that's cool if you're getting personal satisfaction from it, but just understand that you're not going to be able to clip coupons to the point of financial independence. You're probably better off focused on cutting down your restaurant bill in half and then move on to the next thing, rather than focusing on saving, you know, 5 cents on bananas.
Cashflow Tribe.
Hey YouTube, have you checked out Cashflow Tribe yet? It doesn't matter whether you're an experienced, seasoned investor or brand new to the game. I can probably predict if you're currently not having the level of success you want as a real estate investor, it's due to one thing. That one thing is you're not making enough offers, plain and simple. You need to be making more offers as a real estate investor if you want to hit those big, audacious goals that you're setting for yourself. So here's the deal. Cashflow Tribe, that's the community that myself and Ben were making together. And so Ben's actually so busy trying to provide value to you guys that he had to take off there. But here's the deal. Cashflow Tribe is really a one-of-a-kind community focused on results. That's the difference between us and everyone else. We want to get you guys those results. I'm tired of seeing people commenting on my YouTube channel for 2-3 years now, but they're not making offers. What's holding you back? I'm going to guess that it's either a lack of confidence or a lack of competence. And we cover both of those things in Cashflow Tribe. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you guys a 7-day free trial offer. You can join Cashflow Tribe completely free, get to test it out. If you like it, great, stay and pay. If you don't, well, I hope you at least find one great idea that you can take away and use to start making more offers, gain more deals, and finally start making the money related to real estate investing that's probably why you're watching my YouTube channel. So let's do this, guys. Let's make 2020 your year.
Cashflow Tribe.
But just understand that you're not going to be able to clip coupons to the point of financial independence. You're probably better off focused on cutting down your restaurant bill in half and then move on to the next thing, rather than focusing on saving, you know, 5 cents on bananas. Bananas are already crazy cheap. You're not going to really save that much more by focused on, you know, what day of the week are bananas on sale or things of that nature, in my opinion. But I'd love to get your perspective.
I want to create some TV drama here and disagree with you, partly. Okay, here's where we're coming from in this. You guys know, if you followed me, you know that I used to do $200 grocery hauls for 40 bucks. So for a long time, we were saving thousands a year on groceries. At a time when I made $50,000 a year, that was a material amount of money for me. And after tax income, I was shaving from my budget, you know, 10 or 20 or 30%. I was already house hacking, so I didn't have housing expense. My biggest expense was food. We were spending, you know, if I just went out there and got whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted it, it would probably be like $800 a month if I just like ate whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted it. Instead, I could price match. I could go on, you know, the certain day of the week, Cheap Tuesday, for instance, and go in and buy groceries and buy only loss leader items and price match those things, and use the PC points, which is really easy. There's a flip app. You just type in what you want to buy and it brings up like all the lettuce on sale. And so I just literally buy from the app. I let the app organize my shopping for me. I do it all in 45 minutes in the grocery store. It costs me no extra time, and I save. Even today, we still do it. My wife still does it because we get a rise out of like just getting juice for like 70 cents instead of like $2. It just feels good. But the idea is, I think if you can make it part of your routine, And you can do it in a way that it isn't life intrusive. You can use the app, for instance, and you can go on Tuesday just to do your grocery shopping every week. It's not life intrusive, and you can save thousands of dollars. Just be open-minded to that. I would say that it depends. I'll qualify, I agree with what Matt said, but I would qualify with it depends on what you make. Depends on what your skills are worth.
Sure, but again, you're almost always going to be better served to increase your skill set and make more money, because that's an asset that's going to last a lifetime, whereas the skill set of optimizing credit card churn or grocery savings, that's still something you're going to have to stay on top of if you want maximum ROI from that activity, in my opinion. So I think that 99% of the audience is still going to be better served by focusing on things that are going to increase their income and like high level reduce your expenses. So like Mike was chatting about there, I agree that like you shouldn't just be going out and buying whatever you want whenever you want, but there's like a handful of principles that you could likely implement in your life that would get you the vast majority of the same savings, right? Like if you're shopping on the perimeter of the grocery store, if you're doing like all these basic things, you know, if we're mainly buying ingredients versus finished products at the grocery store, thing of that nature, I think those principles will better serve you throughout a lifetime, because again, and this is something we've talked about in a previous video, I think some people literally have coupon clipping, credit card churning, all those high interest savings accounts, things of that nature become almost part of their personal identity as a F.I.R.E. And so then they really struggle, like once they're making 6 figures a month, they're still focused on saving 20 cents on this coupon, where realistically, at that point in time, you're going to be better served just to outsource everything and even pay a premium for that, because your time's going to become so valuable. And I think that, again, it obviously depends what you want to do with your FIRE, right? And, you know, everything's a choose your own adventure, but I think way too often I see new people get into FIRE. They'll follow 1 or 2 blogs, and those blogs will really be focused on credit card churning, grocery hauls, things of that nature. And those are just one little tactic and what should be an overarching strategy, in my opinion.
You know, a lot of the bloggers like Mr. My Mustache and all the people in the space, they still spend like really like $24,000 a year, I think is his rough spend. He still spends like a very low amount for his family, even though he had $400,000 or $500,000 in income. And I think his line of argument was like, just efficiency. He felt like it was a waste to like, he could afford to turn his car on and let it run for 10 minutes outside and heat up, but like, why would he just do that to the environment? Why would he waste the resources? I think, in my opinion, the people who are chasing FIRE don't want to work. And so they don't want to develop high income skills to then work 60 hours a week in their retirement, right? They would prefer, I think, to just be like doing whatever they love, which is maybe like playing video games or hanging out with family. And so if that's your goal, if your goal is not to work in retirement, learning a skill like how to get groceries for half price for 10 minutes a week, that'll serve you really well, because you'll need hundreds of thousands less in your retirement portfolio to create the passive income you need to then satiate the need for those groceries, right? So it could, if you're not wanting to develop high income skills, if you want to just actually retire, which is what typically the movement's supposed to be about with FIRE, it depends on which version of FIRE you want to live. But if you're living a lean FIRE or a middle of the road FIRE and not a luxe FIRE, I think that like housing, groceries, and like the main things are something you should probably embrace, and realize that like part of the FIRE movement is about sacrifice. Most people who reach FIRE don't ball out, right, and just spend whatever they want. They do embrace this frugal mindset, and they stay retired because they're frugal.
And so I think part of the problem, in my opinion, with the FIRE movement is this kind of idealization of frugality, when I think it actually is more about efficiency. And so there is 2 very different things there. So like, you know, being cheap is one category, and then like being efficient's another one, in my opinion. So with, you know, efficiency, I agree, like high level, there's some basic principles we can implement where it's like, oh, like I don't need a 3,000 square foot home for myself. But if I want some of the amenities, maybe what I can do is house hack, or I can live in a condo, which will give me access to a lot of the amenities, Whereas a lot of people, again, I think they get way too fixated, especially when they're new to FIRE, on the details, and they really become slaves to these slogans or these specific tactics rather than really implementing it from a principle-based thinking, which I think that was one of the great things that I really enjoyed about Jacob in Early Retirement Extreme, was because it was so principle oriented, well, yes, like he would have like some crazy ass tactics, like build your own broom, and that's fine if that's something you get personal satisfaction from. But what was more interesting was the principle oriented thinking of just like, well, what does that look like? And for me, like I could quickly summarize and be like, oh, I'd rather a $2 broom from the dollar store than to figure out how to make my own broom. But understanding kind of that thought process, I think is really valuable. But again, it pains me when I see like entire blogs that are only focused on credit card churns for travel points. And I'm like, man, like there are people that literally, they only have so much time to consume content. And that because they're becoming so beholden to this one tactic, I think that they actually slow themselves down in their FIRE journey by going too deep on one niche rather than understanding like the 80-20 principle, where I think that there's a lot of categories where you could spend 20% of the effort and get 80% of the results, in my opinion. Like, you know, you don't have to figure out the perfect optimal housing situation. Probably what you just need to do is figure out a way to house hack or have a roommate. And like you can pretty much just move on to the next category then, rather than trying to figure out where literally the absolute cheapest apartment is available. Same with like things like groceries. There's probably a handful of strategies or tactics you can implement and get the vast majority of those results. And pretty much any spending category, like cars, you don't need to become an expert on what literally the most optimal car arrangement is in order to like save the vast majority of money. Like I can save it right here, buy used. Like that will literally get you the vast majority of the results that any complex strategy will likely have, in my opinion. So just want to kind of challenge the FIRE community on that. But
my biggest tip, I think, before I end off is, and I want to get to this first, but I want people to understand what FIRE is about, sacrifice. The biggest tip to FIRE is sacrifice. Sacrifice is to go without something to have something else. 90% of the population, 90% of people, by definition, will never exceed $60,000 in earnings. They will never have their time be worth more than $20 or $30 an hour. Most FIRE people will never exceed that time value. I'm not saying it's possible. Everyone could probably do it. Mm-hmm. Maybe not everyone's set personality-wise to become, you know, someone who can make six figures. A lot of people can. And for those people who are, they love those blogs because they don't have it in them to make six figures, right? And so for those people, like the majority of the population can't make six figures. And if everyone started learning our skills, there'd be no deals, right? And so potentially, right? Like won't, exactly. Have the personality that doesn't suit itself to real estate or whatever, right? Like.
So one thing just on the touch point of sacrifice, I don't disagree, but again, I think that the FIRE community does themselves a bit of a disservice by focusing so much on sacrifice versus delayed gratification. Again, this may sound like a quibble, but there really is something like sacrifice, I think, has such a negative connotation for most people, whereas delayed gratification is something that's more easy to understand, because I think everyone implements delayed gratification in some aspect of their lives. So like I know of people that struggle financially, but they're able to hit the gym all the time. Or I know of people that struggle in their day job, but when it comes to, you know, volunteering at the local pool or as a referee or this, that, or the other, they're able to delay other things for that gratification. And I think that it's really important, like when we talk about frugality and things of that nature, like we're not talking about being cheap, we're talking about being efficient. When we're talking about things like sacrifice, we're not talking about it having to be painful. What we're talking about is that you need to delay something today in order to gain greater benefit tomorrow. Correct. It's literally just trying to pass that marshmallow test, right? Exactly. Things of that nature.
You have to say no, like to do FIRE effectively today, if you're spending all of what you earn, I'll tell you what, the secret to getting into FIRE is to get your savings rate up. And the easiest way to do that, if you're already working 60 hours a week in Toronto, is probably not, you know, trying to learn high income skills. It's probably learning to get your spending down a bit, maybe to a reasonable level, like $50,000 a year. And so that means, by definition, sacrifice. You now have to give something up. You have to delay that gratification. You can't have 5 marshmallows now. You have to wait and have some later. And so that might feel like sacrifice in the beginning, but I think the secret to FIRE really is realizing that you didn't miss anything. Like when you go from the 5,000 square foot house down to the 1,500 square foot house. Everyone's gonna jump on the comments and be like, that's sacrifice. I would never go down from an 8-bedroom house to a 3-bedroom house. Like, get a roommate, that's so much sacrifice.
And one of my big frustrations is the commenters he's describing would be like, I would never do that to my family. I would never make them sacrifice that way. But then it's like, well, let's take a step back. You spend 80 hours a week commuting and at the office, and you're willing to,
them sacrifice
you're sacrificing their time, their exposure to you, and likely even their exposure to the best version of you. Whereas, and again, like, it's all just about understanding, and like, to me, really pulling back and looking at that 40,000 foot view, right? And really just trying to look at everything holistically, because again, there's sacrifice or delayed gratification there no matter which way we slice it. But it's very rare for us to actually spend the time to sit down and think about what's providing the greatest net value to my family, or to the people that mean the most to me in my life, or to me myself.
Do your kids need the latest and greatest, like, Xbox and cell phone? Like, so many kids have like the new iPhone, like the brand new iPhone. It's like $1,800, and I'm like, all your kids have that. I saw that a lot. I was just in Florida, like on my little snowbird vacation, and I was noticing it's worse in America. It's worse in Orlando, specifically. Like, everyone's driving a new car, and like everyone's just living that life. And you hear about the debt in the United States, and you hear about like this crisis that people are like not able to even barely make their budgets meet. So if there's a recession, they're done. Like, they're insolvent, they're bankrupt. People don't understand they're making a choice. You're choosing the phone, you're choosing the new car, and you're choosing the 80-hour work sentence to pay for that. And so the FIRE movement, the secret to it really is, hey, I'm gonna sacrifice the newest phone for the iPhone 8 that'll, by the way, make you just as happy, for the right to now not need to work and to spend your life living your best life and having now 80 hours a week freed up, or 40 hours a week freed up to do what you want to do with your life, to love the life that you live. That's FIRE. Do what you want to do with your life. And so if that means building a mega empire, do that. If that means coupon clipping or whatever, do that too. If it's somewhere in the middle, maybe you want to do a little bit of real estate and maybe you still want to use the Flip app, I want to get you using the Flip app, dude. Like,
I have zero value in that.
I'm going to get you to use it just like when you're in the grocery store. It's just super easy. You're like, oh, I'm walking to the lettuce. I'm just going to type in like lettuce. And you'll see like, oh, it's like half price for lettuce.
80-20 principle, guys.
Try it at least once.
Anyways, I'd love to get your perspective in the comment section down below. So jump in the comment section. Let us know what's your vision, what's your version of FIRE. You know, are you more focused on coupon clipping, on really getting deep down some of those tactical tunnels, or are you more principle oriented and just kind of taking that 40,000 foot view? I'd love to hear from you. I'm sure Mike would as well. So jump in that comment section, give us your feedback, and let us know what else would you like Mike and Matt to cover on FIRE, because that's really what this whole video and this whole series is about, is us having a two-way conversation with you guys about financial independence and retiring early. So let us know in that comment section down below. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you in the next video.
And as always, this is another installment of Mike
and Matt
on FIRE.
Thanks again to Mike Rosehart for taking the time to make this video. I hope you guys are enjoying this series of videos. If you guys want more Mike and Matt, you know what to do. Just jump in that comment section and give us some feedback. Let us know what other videos would you guys like to see. What other topics should we discuss? Should we go back to reading some Reddit? Should we do an Ask Me Anything? You guys let me know in that comment section down below. Otherwise, if you want more Mike and Matt right now, check out this playlist or this playlist. Yeah, we've done a ton of videos together on YouTube, so I hope you guys enjoy that. Otherwise, remember, making money is a team sport. There's more than enough money in this world for us to all make it, but if you're not saving it, I mean, like, what's the point? Thanks, guys.